Welcome to the Liberal Europe podcast. I'm your host, Ricardo Silvestre, and thank you so much for listening to today's episode. And if there's a conversation that is timely, it's this one. I'm very privileged to be joined by MEP Helmut Brandstätter. The MEP from Nios, Austria, is not only one of our best in the parliament, but also an author of books, where his last one, Trump, Putin and Their Puppets, is the focus of this episode. I talk with the MEP about the main argument of the book, the future of the transatlantic relationship, and how can the European Union defend itself from external threats. This conversation was recorded live at the MEP office, and after the main part, please stay to hear a little more about the path took by the MEP before I got him on the podcast. But now, with no further ado, I bring you MEP Helmut Brandstätter.
I'm here with MEP Helmut Brandstätter. Helmut, thank you so much for coming to the podcast.
Thank you for asking me questions. You know, that's always a good idea to think about certain things, and things are changing in those days. So we have to keep on thinking and speaking.
Well, it's a privilege to have you here. I have the book here in my hand for our listeners right now, which is the main focus of our conversation. This book established an autocratic axis between Trump and Putin, something that I agree wholeheartedly, and my listeners, they know that opinion of mine. So we're going to go into why you think this is the clearest and most worrying symptom of this alliance that has been formed. So tell us a little bit about the thesis of the book.
You know, I told I was here as a stagiaire, and one of the things I always recall and also tell people is we were young, 25-year-old, and when we were sitting together, for an Austrian was an exception because we were not a member of the European Union, but there were those Germans, Italians, French, and so on, Dutch people, Belgian people. And sometimes, not very often, sometimes it popped up, our parents, our fathers were shooting each other, you know, and we're here forming the new Europe. So that's my Europe. And I think, of course, especially as a journalist, especially in time of reunification, I saw Europe, there will be a new Europe, a stronger Europe, and of course, with a very strong ties, with a friendship, not only partnership, friendship with the United States, because we have the common values of freedom, of free speech, common values of democracy, common values of defending democracy, and that was really so important for me. And now we are in completely different times. If you listen to Trump, you know, when he says Europe was founded to screw the United States, first of all, it's growth. Secondly, it's stupid because it's not historical. The European Union wasn't found to screw the United States. On the contrary, I studied exactly the Marshall Plan. And I also tell our people in Austria, I always tell them, you know, we are really a rich country now. Why? First of all, we are a free country because others liberated us. You know, we didn't liberate us. Secondly, without the Marshall Plan, we wouldn't be where we are. Look to Hungary, look to Poland, look to the other countries that were not allowed to have the Marshall Plan. And they were our friends, and it was so important. And then, as I said, I really remember I was also in Berlin when Ronald Reagan said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." You know, this is all my history. And now we're on the other side. Trump doesn't understand history. Trump is not interested. Trump thinks with a selfish politics and with stupid politics like tariffs. Finally, he understands that tariffs are stupid. But to say, we are the masters, we decide what the Europeans should think, that's our end. When he says, if you follow your laws like DSA, the Digital Service Act, then I will punish you, he hasn't understood anything. And finally, we have to wake up. And the other thing is Russia, and that is for an Austrian, of course, very interesting, because you know, many people asking why you're still neutral, because we always trusted the Russians. Of course, they were in Austria for the Soviets in Austria for 10 years, but finally they left. Not only that they left, but we built also quite good economic relationships with them, and it worked normally. Of course, there are a lot of spies in Vienna, everybody knew it, and they misused also the situation. But the relationship with Russia wasn't bad. And people do not want to understand that there is Mr. Medvedev, former president, who says, if Austria joins NATO, we will target them and we will bomb them. People don't want to hear that. They don't understand what Putin wants. Putin, as he said, wants to rebuild the Soviet Union. What does it mean, the Soviet Union? That means that there is a dictatorship again at the Austrian border. And again, what would he do then? So it's really, sometimes I'm tired, but I don't want to be tired.
No, please don't, sir. Yeah.
To explain, I don't want to be tired. To really explain, we are in a difficult situation. And next thing is we are not able alone as Austria to defend if we are attacked. Actually, we are already attacked. I wrote a book in 2020 called The Last Wake-Up Call for Europe, where I really explained how the hybrid war against Austria is running. And I have very good sources explaining this also. There is this hybrid war against Austria. People do not want to understand it. So what I'm trying now is to explain the facts. We are grown-ups. I want to talk to grown-ups and then let's look at the facts and not hope that everything will be fine as it was. No, hope alone will not help.
Then allow me a follow-up on that, because why aren't we seeing more of that, MEP? Why are we seeing this, not capitulation in what we're seeing in the United States, that has been obscene, but this need in the European Union to accommodate Mr. Trump and to have the thumbs up with Mr. Trump and say, yes, Mr. Trump, 15% tariffs, what a great deal. What is your opinion? Why is this happening?
The one thing with Trump also, today we learned that now he's in favor of opening the Epstein files. Yesterday it was different. But, then he said, okay, now members of parliament vote in favor. What kind of democracy is that? If the president tells the members of the parliament,
the House of Representatives,
the House of Representatives, as I said, I was in as a student, I was there as a tour guide, and I was there as a journalist, and I really admired these strong members of House of Representatives, these strong senators.
Which, by the way, sir, let me interrupt you, because originally the members of the House of Representatives would have more power than the president. Yeah. That has the Constitution was designed for that. So,
and that's the democracy, because the powers have to control each other. And now the president tells the members, that already is really incredible. Why don't more? I think more and more to understand it. But let's go through the different groups. The right-wing group, the so-called patriots, where they have the Austrian FPÖ. They, before the elections, they already went there. They said, hopefully Trump will win because he's against wokeism. He's against woke. He's against gender. And, he's also right-wing like us. And they always said, yes, but listen, when he will be president, he will have those higher tariffs. That will cost some Austrians their job. Mm-hmm. Now we know it, and now it happened. But they don't talk about it anymore. They still say he's doing what he should do. He's for make America great again. So we have to make Austria great again, which is, again, very, very stupid, because America is a little bit bigger than Austria. And even if you say make Europe great again, yes, but to make Europe great again, it has to be unified. We need trade agreements, and we need good relations with other countries.
And security.
Sovereignty, even America is not sovereign. America also needs other countries for trade. But that's the problem. Even Austrian right-wing people say, we are sovereign, we don't need the others. That's stupid. That's way to poverty and way into security. So that's them. Then there's like Meloni. She thinks with special relationships to the US, she will have a better life for Italy. That's one of the problems that still, and that I really feel in the European Parliament, there's still a great part of nationalism. We're talking about Mercosur, and the French farmers get up and say, no, it's not good for us. Some Austrian farmers get up and they say, we talk about another topic, and then in this nation they say, but for us it's bad. There's still, even in the European Parliament, you feel a lot of nationalism, and we have to learn that we only as Europeans have a chance.
But it's interesting, because when it relates to Putin, then the European Union stands up, and they don't only criticize him, but actually have sanctions. But when we turn to Trump, is this like a need to, exactly as you said a minute ago, try to sustain this idea that we have common values and we have a common political system, where this is degrading very rapidly in America?
Now, with Putin, it's interesting that really from the ECR, so from the conservatives, also Meloni, also the PiS, of course, Polish, very easy to understand, until the Greens, very strong in supporting to Ukraine. So we really have a great majority because we have understood the danger. I think that's probably the point. People have not understood yet what danger Trump means for Europe if we don't fight. And there is danger. Again, if Trump says you are not allowed to follow your laws, I mean, there's the beginning of the end. If you know, what are we doing here?
Or bombing boats illegally in the Caribbean.
Illegally. Trump wants to be the governor of Europe. He wants to explain what's happening here. You know, the good thing is, just friends of mine from the Liberal group just have been to Canada, and I said, okay, tell them they should join the European Union. We can rename it Transatlantic Union. No, but honestly, we really have to see. Or I met in Vienna. I met the ambassadors now from New Zealand and Australia. I said we have to cooperate. Yesterday, I met the ambassador of Singapore. What can we do together? We really have to see, where are our friends? Where do we find similar values? Where do we find the acceptance? We accept Australian laws or New Zealand laws, you accept European laws, and on this base we can work together. And that was the history of Europe with the United States after 45. And this history is over. That's why I call in this book Zeitenende, because Scholz, said Zeitenwende, turning of times. And I said, it's the end of times. It's really from that what I felt. I also write always about 1990, the Charter of Paris. I was there in Paris as a correspondent with my friend Lorenz, who was a correspondent in Paris. And we saw Kohl, we saw Bush, we saw Gorbachev, the Common House Europe. It was, for young men as I was then, it was incredible. I knew the wall. I knew the Iron Curtain. I knew the history of the war from my parents. And now we are standing here in a completely new world, and that's over. This is over, and we have to understand it and have a new orientation for our politics.
Very good. Changing a little bit of subject, but still on the same topic, because the other thing that I want your opinion, and this is well documented. Actually, I have some work done on this, which is there's a political aspect, and we are in the European Parliament, you just mentioned it, but then there's the civil society aspect, where you have all this kind of either hybrid operations or just persuasive or in tone, just misinformation, disinformation, all that. What is from the European Parliament? How much is this present, and how much are you worried about this?
The one thing about the sabotage we hear that Trump and Rubio, they are sending officials from the United States, especially to Berlin and to Paris now, because what they want is right-wing governments in Paris and Berlin. Because why? Because the Heritage Foundation wrote about it, and they wrote, what do we want? We want nations again. Of course they want nations. But what happened, I also tell my people in Austria, how about Switzerland? They had 39%. For us, they told us 15% tariff. Switzerland, 39%. A very strong, important country, and I would say a stronger country in any sense than Austria, with all due respect to my home country. So what would have meant if Austria had been alone? What would have meant for us? 69% or whatever. And then what happened? Rolex people and other Swiss officials came to Trump, and they gave him presents, and now he obviously is reducing. But that's not our relationship. I always say, since Austria is much smaller, we have the discussion about the Habsburg jewels, which were found in Canada. Mm-hmm. We would have to give him all the Habsburg jewels to reduce our tariffs, But this is crazy. This is the contrary, in another book, I had an interview with Hannes Androsch, who used to be a vice chancellor of Austria and a very, very important person in Austria, built up a lot of companies. And he said he remembers as a young man that there was hunger in Austria, of course. And then there was also times for wheat and so on in America. And Truman said, we still have to send food to Europe because there's hunger. This is what was the transatlantic relationship, and now it's the other way around. They say you don't do what I want, I make your life miserable. As you said, and I think you're right, people haven't understood it yet in Europe. So that's one of our jobs, to explain that it's happening and that we have to do something against it.
I'm going to pick up on what the MEP said. There's this kind of blueprint, like it was the Project 2025 agenda, which is the Great Reset, restoring member state sovereignty in the 21st century. This is done by the Heritage Foundation to European Union member states and their allies in civil society, mostly think tanks in Poland, in Hungary, and in Germany, and in Austria. So something for our listeners to also be aware. Sir, as we're running out of time, and time flies when we're having fun, I want you to give me a little bit then what is the end game here? Actually, you mentioned that you talk about it's the end of times. Not literally, but and also from all the work you did on your book. So what happens next? And let me just start you up with an example. I'm very worried about November 2026. This podcast is going to be published way before that, but I'm very, very worried that something will happen that will make the midterm elections either very contentious or even a constitutional crisis. What are we doing to prepare ourselves for that?
You know, it's not relevant. November 26th is a year. I was thinking about it very much, and I think there's two things. First thing is I try not to buy American goods right now. That's probably childish, but it's the way it is. I wouldn't go. I was on holiday very often with my family in Florida and California. My daughter lived there in California. I wouldn't go there right now on holidays, officially, of course. But still, now I try to find a positive way. And what I think is we have to organize universities, NGOs, and other groups. On the political level, I don't think it's possible right now. But on the NGO level, on universities, it must be possible. We have to get closer ties. And I think, after the elections, I said if I was Minister of Education in Austria, I would immediately go to America and try to get as many scientists as possible. And now they are coming, some are coming. So there are scientists in Europe who know America very well. There are America who know us well. So we have to build up real kind of probably even organizations how to work together. Our democracy must not get lost. The same goes for NGOs, for environment NGOs, which Trump doesn't like, and other NGOs, and probably even organizations like that produce weapons, because they say we still have to cooperate. Trump will be over, but we have to cooperate. I think this is the positive way as far as America is concerned. As far as Russia is concerned, it's different. We have to be strong, 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 because it's the only language which he understands. And we have to, Andrius Kubilius is doing a great job as Commissioner for Defense. The companies have to work together, and we have to show him we can defend ourselves. The European Union will never attack any country, but we are strong enough to defend ourselves in any way. I'm sitting in this commission for EUDS, Democracy Shield. We will fight your disinformation. We will fight your sabotage people here. We will fight your spies here with any means, and we will explain also, which is our job, how far this disinformation goes, and then we have to be strong. So I don't see a way, because some people say we have to talk to Putin, everything will be fine. No, he doesn't want to talk. He could talk. He doesn't want to talk. He wants to attack. But in America, it's a different situation. So I hope that we find enough organizations, people who go there, alumni organizations, with my Johns Hopkins alumni organizations, I will try to do something. We really have to see, we still have the same values. We, the people, not Trump, but we, the people, is already a good idea.
And there's already a precedent, because the Paris Agreement, the first time he left, we had many states in the United States of America saying, we'll work with Europeans and with the rest of the world. So he here has also got a good opportunity. MEP, please tell us, where can people find you online? What is your footprint, social networks?
I'm very much on, I still have more than 100,000 followers on X, Twitter, and I'm active. Some people say too active, because sometimes I also respond. On Insta is I don't have so many followers, but when I write something about Serbia, because I'm the shadow rapporteur for Serbia for my group, it's easily more than 100,000 people watching it, because of course for them it's also interesting. I'm also on TikTok, which works sometimes well and sometimes not so well. And that's about it. Yeah. So I try to be active, because social media is very important for us, and it works quite well.
Very, very well. Please Translate the book to English. We want to have it.
It's Trump, Putin, and their puppets. And I think, of course, I thought about translating, but I think it's very simple. If you buy it via Kindle, and it's easy to translate. Everybody knows now. I'm really stunned how well this translation AI is already working. So I think it's quite simple. And I meet a lot of people who say, I don't speak German so well, but I had it at school and I will try to read it. That's a good chance now to go back to my German beginnings, and that's also a possibility.
Yes, I'll put all the links on the podcast show notes, including the link to the book. Then you can buy on Kindle and ask for the AI to translate. The gentleman is MEP Helmut Brandstätter. I was looking a long time to have you on the podcast, and it was good as expected. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you very much. It was a great conversation. Thanks very much.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. What was the path that you took before becoming a member of the European Parliament?
Actually, one of the most important months which I spent was here in Brussels. It was 1981. I was a stagiaire at the European Commission. I was on Square des Meuse, and very often, when I leave the parliament and walk around here, I pass by this office, which is interesting enough, called today Helmut Kohl Building. Brings me to another part of my life. I was a correspondent in Germany for a long time. So after my studies, I studied in Vienna law. I studied law, and then I studied in Italy at the Johns Hopkins University. Then I was a stagiaire here, and then I was a tour guide in the United States. I have a very close relationship to the United States because I saw most of the states, and I think I understood something about it. That was in the late 70s, early 80s. And then I started at Austrian television, ORF, which is a public TV. And I was very lucky because even after 1.5 years, they sent me to Bonn, then the German capital, as a foreign correspondent. I was there as number 2, and then I was in Vienna for a short time. And they sent me again to Bonn in order to build up the office in Brussels. So I was commuting between Bonn and Brussels in 1986. And then in early 87, something terrible happened. My boss, a young man, a great journalist, died. And so they asked me to stay in Bonn. So I stayed until 91 in Bonn. So, I'm really Generation Kohl because I was in Warsaw with him when the wall was opened in Berlin. I was in Washington, Moscow when he had all these conversations about German unity. And it was really an incredible time. We lived history in a positive sense. We're probably talking about other times afterwards. And then I was in Vienna, editor-in-chief in Austrian television. Then I joined NTV, which is a German news channel. I was there the CEO and editor-in-chief. Then I founded a local TV station in Vienna, which is now a big TV station. Then I had a PR company for 5 years, so on the other side. And then for 9 years, I was editor-in-chief of Kurier, which is a big Austrian newspaper. And then in 2019, we had snap elections because of the Ibiza scandal. And Neos, the liberals, asked me, why don't you run for us? And I was 64 years old. I come from a very political family. My uncle was member of parliament for 20 years, an Austrian farmer, real farmer and a politician. My father was like 30 years the Secretary General of the Austrian Farmers Union, conservative, both Conservative Party, ÖVP. So, for my first days, I heard politics. I was always into politics. I was in student politics. And so at a certain age, I thought, okay, why don't try do it yourself now? And that was 2019. And then in 24, I was running for the European Parliament. And we had a very good result. Now we have 2 members of parliament here. Before that, it was only 1. So we had a good result. And now we're working here very hard, by the way.
Yes, and you do a tremendous work. And we already have also the pleasure of having Anne Strugt on the podcast. And she's amazing also. Why Liberal Party then? When the time comes and Neo's approached, you look at your family like, I come from a conservative background.
Yeah. No, I had a conservative background, but also even when I was in student politics, this was a party close to ÖVP, to the conservatives, but more liberal, more open. And as far as the liberals in Austria is concerned, they were founded. Liberalism doesn't have a very strong history in Austria because, during the Habsburg Empire, the liberals were German liberals. And after 45, there were no liberals at all. Finally, they were founded 12 years ago. And I was fascinated, first of all, that they were so ambitious to really say we need new politics in Austria. One of the main topics was and is education. One of the main topics is free society, transparency, and a new way of politics. And all this for me was really fascinating. And I was running without being party member. I only became party member later on than when I was running for the European Parliament.
This is all for now. I'll be back soon with more podcasts. You can always visit the website liberalforum.eu to know more about the activities of the European Liberal Forum. So until the next episode, let's keep making the world a better place.
You were listening to the Liberal Europe podcast by the European Liberal Forum. This podcast was co-financed by the European Parliament.